to talk about the concept of guilt. Not necessarily survivor's guilt, but that definitely plays a role. But how guilt can be part of a killer's motivations, in speaking specifically about the Idaho 4 case. I was watching an interview with Dr. Gary Brucato, and he was talking about a case to do with a woman who was being stalked by a man. He showed up at her job, and he killed a number of her coworkers. And he injured her, but he didn't kill her. And Dr. Brucato brings up the possibility that that was very intentional, that he wanted her to survive so that she would feel the guilt of feeling responsible for all of it, you know, as some sort of payment or payback or retribution. And that conversation made me think of Dylan. We know that Dylan saw the suspect in some manner, whether she was looking out the door, whether she ran into him in the hallway, which is what I think happened. And people have said, why didn't he kill her? Why didn't he kill her? Well, there are a lot of reasons. He could have been tired. He could have wanted to get out of there. Or, you know, power and control and dominance is a very common motive for crimes like this. Choosing to keep her alive could have been a very intentional choice by the suspect, because he wanted her to suffer that guilt of not doing anything. But it also could have been she wanted her to suffer that guilt as some kind of personal payback. Now, in the podcast that I just linked, in the episode description that I just put up, I go more into depth about this, because I am very open to the possibility that the suspect in this crime is somehow related or connected to Bryan Kohberger or to the suspect. And I say that because in one of the documents that Ann Taylor wrote, she says there's no connection to the victims, but she never says there's no connection to the survivors, which that sticks out to me. So could that decision to leave Dylan alive, could that have been intentional? And could it be because he wanted her to feel guilty? He wanted her to feel like she was responsible for those murders. To listen to the whole podcast, just go to characteranalysis.substack.com. I also talk about Ann Taylor's use of language and how she might be manipulating language in certain areas of a document from back in June. One of the examples I go over is the 3 unidentified male DNA. And I point out something very interesting that makes me think that she wasn't being forthcoming, that she's trying to misdirect. So again, that link, it's in the episode description. Now I want to talk about a live that Melissa Jade did, and I'm going to link to her, again, link to her in the episode description. And she did a live about what she called, very cleverly, what she called the Idahoax, which was about people who have inserted themselves into this crime, who might be disruptors, who might truly believe that they have information about the case, and how it's affected the case. Now let's first talk about, why do people do this? Why do people insert themselves into cases like this? And we've heard about this. We've heard that people who are actually involved with the crime sometimes insert themselves into the investigation. But with social media and the internet, now we have people inserting themselves into murders and cases with very, very differing motivations. You know, just based on my research on trolls, you know, why do they do it? Some people do it just to disrupt a narrative, just to cause trouble, to maybe redirect the conversation because what's being said conflicts with their own personal beliefs. And so they'll put stuff out there to make people think that, to change people's mind, basically. And we do see this. We see this with a lot of accounts on TikTok. There are a number of accounts on TikTok, you know, especially the one that just posted about how 400 people streamed the murders. Okay, it came from this person. this person's nuts. And if they're not nuts, they are an intentional disruptor that has been hired to cause disruption in this case. That's my personal opinion. Just because Ann Taylor said, oh, there's 400 witnesses. Oh, well, there just happen to be 400 people streaming. It's so stupid. I don't know why people are indulging it or giving it any credibility, but stop. In any case, so we've got the disruptors. But then we have people who I think truly believe that the information they have can help the case. That who feel very righteous and who want to be heard, want to be acknowledged. And I do think that's a big part of why trolls do what they do, is they want attention, right? They want attention, they want to be noticed. But the third reason, I think, is probably one of the more common reasons, which is these people want to feel like they're part of a community. They want to belong, right? They want to belong somewhere. And so they come in and they come up with this story so that people will focus their attention on them and want to get to know them, because I see that a lot on social media. A lot of people, they want to be insider adjacent. They want to be friends with people who have even the slightest connection to this case. And so I think some people take advantage of that and they use it to sort of quell their own loneliness. Now, the first person I want to talk about is WSU Kim. My personal feeling is that WSU Kim is one of those righteous people. They believe that there is a cover-up. They believe that something's amiss. And so what they're doing, they're doing with what they think are good intentions. I think with WSU Kim, as the story goes, and I've listened to as many interviews as I can, and the gist that I get is she was driving home from Parents' Weekend at WSU. Her daughter, who goes to WSU, sent her a text, told her about the murders, and as she was talking to the daughter was like, well, how did, Kim asked her daughter, well, how do you know? Oh, we've all known, there have been texts going around all morning. I don't know exactly what was said, because she's never produced the text, which is a red flag, obviously. I think from there, I think Kim's daughter, first of all, might have embellished a little, which would explain why she refuses to talk to law enforcement or go on record anywhere. I think there might have been some embellishment there, because again, remember, people like to be insider adjacent. Oh, I have a friend there, and they told me, they think there's some sort of cachet to that. I think her daughter might have told her something that led Kim to believe that news of this crime had spread very early in the morning. The thing is, Kim said her daughter told her that they had been stabbed. Nobody knew the cause of death until almost 2 days later. The police might have known, but the students didn't know. Because remember, the only people to see them were Hunter, maybe somebody else. And I'm sure the minute police were called, he was whisked away. So in the time of, Kim said she got the text at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I find it unlikely that Hunter would have been out there telling the story within 3 hours or so. And so from that narrative and from what the little information she had from her daughter, I think Kim built a narrative, but I think at some point, Kim started to embellish herself and started to believe it. They were, Dylan and Bethany, they were awake and they were aware. Well, that's true. They were aware of something and they were awake. But to go on and say, well, they knew who the people were and they were told to stay in their rooms. I mean, that's just, how would Kim know that? How would anybody know that? And why would this information be filtered down to Kim? It just doesn't make sense. See, I think Kim is a righteous person. I think Kim feels like, the schools, they're not safe. She's terrified for her own kids. And so she's fighting to get what she feels is right. She wants more transparency. She wants, and I think she's motivated by wanting her children to be safe, which I think any parent can understand. I just think she's taken it a little too far. Now I want to talk about Justin Rodriguez. Now, if you don't know who he is, do a search for Justin and Dylan Mortensen. Last year, early, I think, he came out with this story about how Dylan had been attacked as part of a hate crime because she's trans, and that her being trans played a role in the murders. Now, Justin is a trans man. Justin also said that he learned that Hannah Cleary, who unfortunately took her life, who is somehow associated with the King Roadhouse, Justin says that Hannah was trans as well, and that he was transitioning to Hans. In this case, this feels like one of those disruptors. This feels like somebody who has a certain ideological belief and who's using this case, the exposure, to get his message or their message out there. And while I think trans rights are a very, very important topic, I think in this case, Justin knows that he's lying. I think he's well aware that he's lying, and I think he's doing it to disrupt the narrative, to disrupt the discourse. And obviously, I don't agree with that. Now let's talk about Dot. And I'm going to be honest, I'm very hesitant to talk about Dot because I've had personal conversations with Dot, and he messaged me once to show me some receipts regarding something unrelated to the case that would benefit me. And so myself and another person got on a call with him, and a recorded call, by the way, and we talked about what he knew. And the only information I took that I felt was credible was what he backed up with screenshots. Everything else, I couldn't believe him. And the thing about Dot, and I noticed this with Melissa Jade when he came into Melissa Jade's box. And for the record, from talking to him, he identifies as male. His pronouns are he, him. Regardless of what you think of him, nobody gets to strip people of their humanity. Those are his pronouns. And I see a lot of people intentionally misgendering him. Let's not do that. When he went into Melissa Jade's box, the story he told had changed from what he had told people on TikTok a month earlier. When he was in Melissa Jade's box and he was telling his story about how he came to talk about this, being a witness or telling a story on behalf of somebody else who was a witness to the Idaho 4 crime, and how he found this sort of this TikTok creator who gave him a platform. When he told Melissa Jade, the story was, I met Brett Norton on 4chan. And Brat pushed me, and Brat was sort of controlled me, and Brat this and Brat that. So Dot crafted that story to fit Melissa's bias. And I don't say bias in a negative way, because we all have a bias here and there. And he's very good at doing that. But in the case of Dot, I think what Dot was looking for was acceptance and community. Because having had personal experience with him, the sense that I get is this is someone who creates situations to get attention, but not just to get attention, but to use to connect with other people. Now, not only is he very good at storytelling, but he consumes all content about this case. He's probably watching this right now. He consumes everything. He knows the names and the players. This is why when he went to Brat and he told her about how he saw people out in the backyard the mornings of the murders, and it was Emma Bailey and Demetrius and Ashlyn Couch and Dylan and Quinn. Those are all people that Brat had talked about in her own theories and her own videos. And he knew that. And he did it because he wanted her to believe him, because he knew if he tells her something like that aligns with the bias she already has, she's more likely to believe him, and he's right. He's a very, very, very smart guy. And that's why it's so tricky to have any kind of conversation with him. Because he wants that acceptance, he will craft a narrative that aligns with whatever narrative the person he's talking to has. And he does it so that people will listen to him, so that he'll be accepted. Because a month ago, the story was he met somebody else at 4chan and they introduced him to Brad Norton. On Melissa Jade show, it was he met Brad Norton on 4chan. And that's how we found out about Brad Norton. It changes depending on who he's talking to. And it's all done for acceptance and to be listened to and to be heard. And to not be disregarded. Here's the thing. I don't think we've seen the last of these disruptors, of these trolls. We've got another year before, at least before this trial. I think there are going to be more, and that's why we need to be more vigilant, and we need to vet people, and we just need to understand that there are people on here, on these platforms, who just desperately want to be part of something, who want to insert themselves, who want to feel important, and who will tell you whatever they think is going to get them the recognition that they want. And that really is the trolling that's, I think, behind the trolling that's going on with this case. All right. Remember, if you want to talk about the potential of Dylan being spared because Bryan knew her or the suspect knew her and he wanted her to live with the guilt, if you want to listen to or talk about the documents, the way Ann Taylor manipulates language to create a narrative, go listen to my podcast, characteranalysis.substack.com, linked in the episode description. But while you're here, I want to hear, what troll has stood out to you the most? What one do you think was the most prolific, who did the most damage, basically? And I want to hear, do you think it's possible that the suspect knew Dylan? I know a lot of you are going to say yes. Okay, I'm open to it. I want to hear about it. So leave your thoughts in the comments.